Chronicle said the hand of the Lord was upon me and carried me out in the spirit of the Lord.
We are on seraphim. And look at what is happening here. These are super beings that fly above the throne of God. And understand, ladies and gentlemen, that Lucifer was the highest seraphim. Lucifer, the Bible said, he was created as an instrument of worship. He was created to worship. Not just to worship, but as an instrument of worship. So he had access. He was the only seraphim that had access to the inner chamber of the Trinity, because of what he was made up of. God created him special. The Bible addresses Jesus is known in heaven as the bright morning star, and Lucifer is addressed as the morning star. He is the only seraphim that was created close to stand in the office of the Son of God, the bright morning star and the morning star. No wonder he had so much access and so much knowledge and information about the throne and about God himself. So you don't joke with him. Am I speaking to somebody here? Now these seraphims, I'm showing you the order and the protocols around the throne. I am showing you. Now, after the seraphims, you come to the angels who are known as cherubs or the cherubims. Now the cherubims are still the angels that are referred to as the four living creatures. Now these angels are within the throne and outside the throne. The cherubims are within the throne and outside the throne. Now what they do is that they call them the throne angels. They guard and they defend the throne. Am I speaking to somebody here? Cherubims guard and defend the throne. Now when I began to study the scriptures, in the revelation of John on the island of Patmos, he saw these angels, and we are going to read the encounter John had about the cherubims. They were before the throne and they protect the throne. They service the altar of heaven. They are inside and they are outside. And then my spirit man began to search that, but the Bible never said by a sword they are holding to defend the throne. The Bible said all that the cherubims do is to lift their voice and cry out, holy, holy, holy at the Lord. And the Bible said they do that day and they do that all night long and all day long. All they do is to cry out, holy, holy, holy. Yet the Bible said they are the throne defender. So now the question here comes, by what instrument are they using to guard the throne? Am I speaking to somebody here? You cannot guard without a weapon. Pastor Solomon, am I speaking to somebody here? You guard with a weapon, but the Bible never recorded any weapon that these angels are holding to guard the throne of God. The seraphims have 6 wings, but the cherubims have only 4 wings. Now the seraphims having 6 wings, they use 2 to cover their face, because they are very close to the glory and they are the highest classification of angels. So they can't look at his face. The light and the brightness of the glory is too much that they have to cover 2 with their face. And they cover their feet also with 2 wings. Now why do they cover their feet? Feet is known to be unclean. And so to stand in the holy of holy with the Lord in heaven, you cannot present your feet. You have to cover it. And that is the reason why Jesus came here on earth and he began to introduce feet washing. And the Muslims wash their feet every day to strip themselves of every uncleanliness. But we do it once in a while. But in heaven, seraphim, they cover it, and with the 2 they fly. Yet they are also throne defendant. So Pastor Solomon, what is the weapon they are using to defend the throne? The Bible said their responsibility and their duty, man of God, is to cry out, holy, holy, holy at you, Lord. It stands to reason that worship and praise is a strong tool and a weapon to defend the throne of God. Listen to me, ladies and gentlemen. Whenever you hear the word worship, it is to speak well of a man. It is to revere the man. It is to make mention to him who he is and what he is. It is to tell him what he has done and what he is able to do. Am I speaking to somebody here? So when you are in the kingdom, what makes you a defendant of the kingdom is when you speak well of the king. And that is why God has surrounded himself with worshippers. Because you see, God doesn't love a negative energy. Any power that is close to God is singing holy, holy, holy to him. Am I talking to somebody here? Am I speaking to somebody here? It comes down to you and I to be a very effective leader and to have an upper hand in life. You need to surround yourself with people who appreciate and value you. And so in heaven, the seraphims, they are shouting holy, holy, holy. That is their weapon of defense around the throne. The cherubims, who are the 4 living creatures, all they do is to cry out holy, holy, holy. That is their weapon. You know what happens in heaven? Anything Jesus and Christ has not done, and anything he was expected to do and he hasn't done, it is not mentioned in heaven. All that is mentioned in heaven are the works of his hands and the testimony of Jesus and who he is and the reverence of God. And the Lord said to me today, he said, son, there is no power in heaven except the blood of the Lamb and the testimony of Jesus. And that is why when there was a war in heaven, the Bible said Michael, who is the minister of defense in heaven, he fought. And the Bible said the dragon and his angels, they fought back. Listen to me. Listen to me. You have to appreciate the finished work of Christ. Because you see, if not for Christ's blood, which has qualified you and I to be elevated above angels and demons, who are thou to look at the devil in the face and say, Satan, I dare you? Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Now understand, ladies and gentlemen, when you come into the we will go there. Let me just preach and teach at the same time. In the classification of angels, and listen to me, there is a spirit called Leviathan. And this Leviathan, he is an instrument of war. He was built for battle. That Leviathan is stronger than Lucifer. And he works in the department of army. He works in the department of army in heaven. Now listen, Daniel had a revelation about Leviathan. And he said, what can conquer Leviathan? What? Daniel said, what? He was built never to be conquered. That is how God built him. And he stood in the defense army in heaven. Mighty warring angel. And you want to understand that when Lucifer lost his place in heaven, before he lost his place, then Leviathan had been the one to be ejected out of heaven first. Let me show you some things. Satan was not the one that first came out of heaven. It was Leviathan. And Leviathan, when Satan began to go into the throne in and out, he began to understudy the master. Please sit down. He began to understudy the master and began to know certain keys that makes God God. But always understand that no master will open himself all out for you to know. And those of you that come close to grace and we share things with you, don't think they are everything we know. We share with you some and not everything. And nothing will make us share everything. Because one day you can become a Lucifer. Somebody shout out here. He was once the dearest angel. And once upon a time, the angel that God loved the most above all angels, he created him as a morning star. Somebody say, you're talking to me. And when he came in and out and began to fly above the throne of God, he understood the sweetness of flying above the throne. And then he went to Leviathan and they began to discuss situations. Don't you think when we begin to create our own kingdom, Leviathan incited Lucifer? Don't you think when we begin, because whenever he goes to see Leviathan, he shares kingdom secrets with him, he shares throne secrets with him. Then Leviathan said, don't, with what you know, we can conquer heaven. and take over. So evil first entered Leviathan, and when the evil, I'm showing you what led to the coup in heaven. When the evil entered Leviathan, it was sighted in heaven, and there was no place, because everything in heaven is a reflection of God. I'll come there. The moment you lose your reflection, you lose your place. So he lost his place, and he was cast out of heaven. But before then, man was not created. So there was a world called the pre-Adamic world, or the pre-Adamite world. That was the world before the creation of man. And the pre-Adamic world was very dirty and it stinks, comparing heaven and the pre-Adamic world. So the guy was here tormented, and he was not feeling the coolness in heaven. And every now and then, Lucifer, who was an archangel that could enter anywhere, would come and visit him in the pre-Adamite world. And by regular visit, you see, that is why when people become a rebel and they break away, you have to excommunicate them. If you're a church member and you are still talking to church folks who have broken church law and disrespected authority, and you are still in touch with them, you will later rebel as well. I'm telling you. So whoever defies authority and speaks at the face of authority and leaves the church, the moment they leave, you block them. Am I speaking to somebody here? Because they are envious of the grace you are enjoying every night. Wherever they go, they will not experience the same grace, and they make sure that what they have lost, you also will lose. And so by regular visit to Leviathan spanned the mind of Lucifer, and they said, with me on your side, we can conquer everywhere. Listen, Michael himself is afraid of Leviathan. When it comes to strength, Michael can't stand Leviathan. Go and read about Leviathan. You'll understand who Leviathan is. The Bible said his eyes alone are flames of fire. His breath is flames of fire. His body is an iron body. And the Bible said in Leviathan's mouth is an uncountable iron teeth that breaks iron. The Bible said he chews iron like grass. That is how he was built. When God builds something to war, you know he has really built it. So Lucifer now knows that Lucifer now knows that Leviathan is on the side. Then he went to heaven and began to conjure and control the minds of the stars in heaven. The stars in heaven are the angels in heaven. And the Bible said they got 1/3. We shouldn't be worried, Pastor Solomon, when people in the church rise against us. It happened in heaven. We are not the first. Am I speaking to somebody here? Rebellion didn't start today. And no matter how you are good to a church member, and no matter how you show love and affection, one day they will look at you and say you are nothing. One day that the same love you give them, they will turn the love around. They will pierce your heart. Say you are talking to me. And he won 1/3 of the heavenly host of angels to himself. When he won them, he came to Leviathan. He said, I have conquered 1/3. Leviathan said, listen, you don't need all 1/3. We are good to go. And the Bible said the war broke out in heaven. And when the war broke out in heaven, when you study about the revelation of John about the throne, you see the throne of God, it is not easy to get there. It is not easy to get there. When after the seraphims, you come to the cherubims, who are the 4 living creatures that are before the throne. And after the 4 living creatures, you come to the 7 spirits of God. And after the 7 spirits of God, then the Bible said there is a sea of glass around the throne. It's a whole sea of glass around the throne. And after the sea of glass, then you come to the 24 elders who have also surrounded the throne with their thrones. So you see, to enter into, we have to thank God. When you are singing, you say, I enter to the Holy of Holies. It is only by the finished work of Christ that gives you and I access to penetrate through these dimensions and protocol. Somebody say you are talking to me. So God was in heaven. Sit down please for a few minutes. God now was in heaven looking at the battle going on. And Michael is the minister of information who come to the responsibilities of angels and their assignment. Michael gathered his angels. They said, war has come. Let us go and fight. And the Bible said the dragon broke through into heaven with a 1/3 with Leviathan as his field marshal. And they entered and the war began. The war was intense. The war was fierce. And Michael, with all the authority he had in heaven, he could never take them down. Michael couldn't take them down. So the Bible said, when the war became intense, ladies and gentlemen, Leviathan as one man was conquering everywhere. As one angel was conquering everywhere. Now Michael looks at the thing and said, our might and our power, it can't fight this battle. We need to fall on the only two power in heaven. In heaven there is no superior power but only two. And that is the testimony of Christ. That is what the seraphims are using to defend the throne. Am I speaking to somebody here? That is the weapon in heaven and the blood of the Lamb. And the Bible said, and when the battle became fierce and Michael discovered that we can't fight this army, they dropped their shield, they dropped their sword, they dropped their guard. And the Bible said they dropped everything and lifted their hands, and they began to fall on the testimony of Christ. They began to worship, they began to praise, they began to sing, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. And as they began to worship, the Bible said that they overcame them by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. And the Bible said they loved not their lives even unto death. Ladies and gentlemen, what does that stand to reason? Worship is a weapon. Worship is a weapon. Am I speaking to somebody here? The Bible said, be anxious for nothing, but in everything, through prayer and supplication, make your request with thanksgiving unto God. So thanksgiving and thanksgivers and worshippers have close access to the throne of God. Am I speaking to somebody here? That is why I do not envy a preacher with revelation. I envy a worshiper that is able to move God. Am I speaking to somebody here? You guys, I envy you guys. If I had the kind of voice that you guys have, that would have been another dimension of my ministry. Is anybody hearing me? But when it comes to worship, it has nothing to do with voice. It has nothing to do with the sweetness of your voice. It has everything to do with the brokenness of your spirit. Is anybody hearing me? Somebody lift your voice and shout, I hear. Now sit down for a few minutes. Sit down for a few minutes. That was the weapon they used to overcome Lucifer and his cohort. The moment they dropped their shield, they fell on the testimony of Christ and they began to worship. In the face of fierce battle, after you have done everything possible and nothing begins to move, drop everything, enter into the realm of worship. Am I speaking to somebody here? Enter into the realm of worship. Now let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. God is surrounded with positive energy. God. And I want you to walk in that dimension from tonight. Surround yourself with positive people. People that are going to be like, Pastor Desmond, you good. You look good, man. Alan, you a handsome boy. I love everything about you. I love how you were able to make that delivery of speech the other day. It was so cool, man. The moment they speak good of you, it's an act of worship. It's a defense to your spirit. You have to guard your spirit with all diligence. If you allow people with negative expression to come around you, they will break your spirit. And going forward, and I say this and I repeat again, you hear anything about me, you are entitled to your own opinion. You are entitled to believe it or not to believe it. Keep it in your head. Don't come and tell me. If you don't clap, I don't really mind. Everything these angels are doing, I say holy, holy, holy. Amen. Surround yourself with people who they praise you. When you look good, say you look good. You wear nice shoes, they say you are looking wearing nice shoes. Not people that will come and say, hey, Kobe, you know what I heard about you. You can never operate in a higher spiritual frequency if you surround yourself with negative people. Am I speaking to somebody here? Walk in the consciousness of this knowledge. I'm teaching you something tonight, and this is an express way to power. Every day you hear negative thing, they break you. And you see, in the spiritual frequency, you cannot afford to lose God. Because at every frequency you move, you encounter something new. The moment you are driving in town or you are traveling and you pass a certain township, and the frequency of the radio station you are hearing, sometimes you pass a certain town and it cuts. Shh, you don't hear anything again. Within that space of shh, maybe there is a relevant information that the next town there's a coup d'etat, nobody should enter there. You lost it, you ran into it, and you died. So you cannot afford to lose your spiritual consciousness and frequency. Therefore, keep every negative thing you hear to yourself. Sometimes you are operating in a high altitude until you hear something negative. So God surrounds himself with positive energy. That is why in heaven there is no department that receives complaint. So stop complaining. You call to God, Lord, haven't you seen? Don't you see? Look at how I'm growing. I am growing. Look at my age now. He cares not about your age. Before God, somebody has lived 900 years. So you say you are 40 years, it doesn't move him. Am I speaking to somebody here? He is not moved by complaint. The greatest sin that the Israelites committed, and he killed a whole generation, was the sin of murmuring. Can't you see? We are starving. Can't you see? Some of you don't let that be your last. That you ever stand in your room and say, look at my age. Can't you see I am growing? If you don't do it, I won't serve you. Many people give God deadline. You don't know? Many people. Last year, somebody met me and said, if this year by June, God doesn't do anything, then God should forget about her. Yeah. She's not even in church tonight. I said, what kind of God? What kind of audacity and disrespect? Am I speaking to somebody here? Listen to me. He said, be anxious for nothing, but in everything, through prayer and supplication, make your request with thanksgiving. Make your request with thanksgiving. It means that there is a difference between prayer and supplication. Prayer may not require thanksgiving, but supplication requires it. Am I speaking to somebody here? Supplication is entreating God and requesting for something in a humbling way. So before you can get it from him, maybe your daughter is sick or your son is sick. That is not the time. It is not an act. You don't pray at the time. You make supplication. And the supplication is you come to him with worship. You see, you have to learn how. Let me tell you something. God was showing me something today. Sit down. Listen, there is a center in heaven that receives supplication. But when that center receives supplication, it does not guarantee answer. Until your prayer or your supplication hits the table of the Trinity, answer is not coming. Now, what would take your supplication from the supplication center in eternity and transport it to the throne is thanksgiving and worship.
I hear the Spirit of the Lord moving like a rushing wind, saying revival, says revival. I hear the Spirit of the Lord moving like a rushing wind, resurrection power.